Before we begin, thank you very much to Mecha Freak 2 for joining the Patreon campaign. Very appreciated. Thank you so much for the help and the support to keep the channel going. Normally, this is where I would kind of poke and prod to go, oh, hey, I'm running low on shoutouts. We're about to go back to the normal intro. I don't have time for that because we got a long video for you today. We have to rewrite Beast Machines from the ground up, which is not easy to do. There's a lot to this, and this is essentially going to be me reading the summary of a fanfic I have written for all of you, based on what I just went through, watching and going through every single episode and going, this is how I would do this is how I would do that. So, similar to what I did with Power Rangers Super Mega Force, we are going to be doing a total rewrite of Beast Machines the way I think it should have been done. Yeah, expect a lot of the story beats to be similar, a lot of the themes to be similar, but we're going to dial a lot back, and we're not going to rely so much on G1 history as we are Beast Wars history, because it's a sequel to Beast Wars. Now, just like the Super Mega Force Let's Fix video, I'm going to stick to the same style of parameters. I am not going to add episodes to increase the length of the series and fix it that way. I am not going to increase the show's budget. I will work within the limitations of the series that we know were in place. I'm not going to radically shift the direction. The answer to like what would fix Beast Machines is not nuking the planet. Don't go that far. No, we're going to be talking about how I would have written the story from the ground up. And we're going to start off the same way, but we're going to go in a very different direction. And I hope you will enjoy it. So, let us begin, shall we? So, the series will begin with a brief recap of the Beast Wars for those unfamiliar. So, this can be a proper jumping on point for everybody. We're flying home to Cybertron with Megatron bolted to the roof. We don't go to a flashback to see this. This is how we start the series. The events play out the same. Megatron breaks free, falls out of the transwarp tunnel, and the Maximals really have no idea what happens to him. They know that he fell off, but not what happened to him. Now, when the Maximals land, it's actually quiet on Cybertron at first. Though eventually they are found by a squad of unknown mysterious transformers, tank drones, who end up blowing up their ship and send them running. While they are attempting to flee, they are also fighting back, and they are doing so fairly well, because they're still completely capable. There's no transformation virus, because I thought that was a stupid plot from the beginning, so we're not using it. No, they are still having considerable trouble, though. The longer it goes on and the longer they fight, the more exhausted most of them are getting, and they're not entirely sure why. Rhinox and Silverbolt seem fine, but the rest, they are haggard, and they're starting to even glitch out to the point where transformation is starting to become difficult for them to do. Rhinox and Silverbolt do attempt to hold off the Horde while Optimus finds a passage underground to lead everybody into. But at this point, they have become so weak, they can't wait for their friends. So with Rhinox and Silverbolt holding the line, they end up tumbling down farther into the depths of Cybertron. When they wake up, they're in a dark corridor somewhere deep in Cybertron. It is quiet, and you can tell no one has been down here for centuries. Black Arachnia, guess what? Gets to be the smart one like she was in Beast Wars. She figures it out. Now that they are away from the residual energon fields of Earth, their Vok-empowered transmetal forms are losing power. Remember, even though Season 2 stated that energon was detonated or stabilized, they still found raw energon here and there in the series. So it was definitely still an atmosphere thing. We even had like a full-blown energon storm in Season 2, right? So clearly, energon was still a thing. And because the Vox energies are what influence transmetals, stands to reason that those transmetal forms would draw their power from the natural energon. So, separated from that, they are quickly losing power, and they are going to go offline. However, something in a nearby panel starts leading them deeper into the tunnels. It's a gold glow that keeps moving them deeper and deeper. When they're almost depleted, they reach a chamber that lights up to reveal not the Oracle, but Vector Sigma, the Cybertron master computer and conduit, which brings sparks from the Matrix to the living world. I understand this is, remember, this is still G1 cartoon continuity, so we are still able to use something like Vector Sigma, but we are not going to just keep depending on Deus Ex G1 for a lot of these situations. Essentially, we are going to make this show less spiritual in nature, and we're going to use Vector Sigma similar to the Oracle, but without Primal constantly leaning on it. It's still gonna be the source of our plot, though. It states that Cybertron is in great danger, and to save it, the Maximals will have to find the seeds of the future lying buried in the past. Yes, I'm gonna keep using that line. Let's see, and now, because of the situation, Vector Sigma is what reformats the Maximals into their new transorganic bodies. Though the computer seems exhausted after the effort, and you don't see it. You don't get an explanation, and they don't really know exactly what these new bodies are for just yet. The final scene does play out much like it did in episode 1. They fight off some cycle drones, they have a hard time transforming. Primal only does it in a desperate moment. The only change I'm making here is the fact that you don't get a hint of what Megatron is or where he is. Episode 2, the Maximals are going to be searching the surface for signs of Silverbolt and Rhinox, but they're not going to find anything. Cycle drones are still on patrol, but scouring the surface in beast mode, they realize that their scanners cannot detect them. Very important in this series, so I'm keeping that element alive, and we're going to use it in a very different way here in a minute. Let's see, where am I at on my list here? Sorry, my thing scrolled up for some reason. Rat Trap does lead Black Arachnia into a data facility to try and find out what happened to the other Cybertronians, but everything has been cryptic. Everything has been encrypted, and Black Arachnia does recognize it as one of Megatron's codes, so they know that he is behind the Viacons and that he is on Cybertron, but they have no idea where he is. And BA cannot get through the encryption in order to gain access to the full database. She does, however, get access to the low-level systems, like the planet's scanners and maps. And once she does, she spots a gold glow that looks very similar to Vector Sigma's. It leads them somewhere very deep, recessed into the planet. And they take it as a cue that this is a message from Vector Sigma telling them where to go. Outside, Optimus is trying to tell Cheetor how to transform, with Cheetor fearing that it's beyond his abilities. Primal does reassure him how much he's grown since they first left Cybertron, and does show confidence in him, trying to be the nurturing father figure type. Aerodrone spot them from the sky before they have a chance for a breakthrough. Primal cannot fight them off himself. They're too fast. So Cheetor focuses up and makes the transformation. His speed and his little gliding ability is enough to turn the tide and fight off the Aerodrones. The group does get back together to follow the new lead, going even further underground than they previously did to find Vector Sigma. And once let's say about the same level, but in a very different direction. They find the ruins of the old Autobot and Decepticon war. All the old cities that the new Maximal cities were built on top of. And this is where they find where the signal was leading them. The ruins of the original city of Iacon. Now, place is called Old Iacon, and it is the place the Maximals now explore. And here, we're going to see something way different than what we saw in Beast Machines. I want to give them stakes, like obviously the stakes are high in Beast Machines, but you don't see it. It's not visualized because the cast is so small. So here, we are actually going to extend this. When they explore through Old Iacon, what they find are Cybertronians. Cybertronians by the dozens, and as they keep walking, by the hundreds. Now, in order to fill out the scene, we're going to have to get very creative with assets, because like I said, we're working with the same limited budget that Mainframe had for Beast Machines. So we're not going to add a whole bunch. What we're going to do is we're going to use the Season 1 Beast Wars character models in Beast mode, and we're gonna mess with them as much as it takes in order to fill out this scene. So in the distance, you'll see things that are simply basic recolors. Tigatron as an orange tiger, a flock of air razors, each with different color schemes attached to them. You're going to see recolors of Waspenator in as a normal bee. A lot of things like that. You'll see a primal that is more like a silver or like an albino gorilla. Distance things that you can reuse in the distance and pass them off as something else. Closer to the middle and the foreground, you're going to get a lot more modified models. So Rhinox with a new head becomes a hippo transformer. You get to see Silverbolt and Quickstrike remodeled into just like a normal sand scorpion and a normal black wolf. And just trying to come up with creative ways to reuse those models to fill out this scene and make it look like old Iacon has a population of survivors from the Viacon apocalypse. So now you have this wealth of characters that you can work with and a very visual view of what you're trying to save. In particular, there's a few that are going to stand out and they're going to become side characters for this series. One of them is a giant red and yellow snake, based on the one we saw in Beast Wars. This is going to be Night Viper. He is young and he's idolizing this new crew of Maximals. And he is the type that wants to help wherever and whenever he can. Very, very eager to please the new cool Maximals. When Night Scream shows up, they're going to form a very fast friendship. I've decided I'm going to call them the Knights of Cybertron. I cringe if you want, but I think it would work for both of them. He's going to be a fun character throughout this retelling. If this was a real series, I'd want to make him very kind of endearing young character. Another one is going to be a dark blue raven type named Rav, named after the toy from the series. In the show, this was a redone Air Razor with a different animal head, which is why I'm allowing all these replacement animals for the crowd shots of old Iacon, because they've done it in the past. And of course, it's not nearly as expensive to do. She's going to be hot-headed. She's going to be ill-tempered. She's very angry at the whole situation. She'll defend old Iacon, and she's ultimately a Maximal, but she kind of reminds Black Arachnia of herself when she was just kind of angry and survival focused in Beast Wars. She's gonna make a good foil for the more calm characters. See, okay, and we're gonna finish this off with they do get strange looks from all these Maximals, by the way. Things go quiet when they show up until they catch the attention of a large black saber-toothed tiger. I'm naming this one Saberclaw because this one has to be a completely original character. Now, I'm reusing the Sabertooth and the Snake as main characters for one major reason. Their mouths have been modeled to move, so we can actually animate them speaking without adding too much to the budget. Rav will have to have different animation because I don't think the beak moved on the character model there. But that's a minor. That's a much easier one than a beak is much easier than a fleshy mouth. So I'm giving it this much. Saberclaw is the closest thing to a leader they have. He's trying to keep the whole thing organized and trying to keep old Iacon safe from the Viacons. He does explain what happened to the Maximals as much as they know. He does make it a point that this survivor camp actually does include Predacons too, because right now none of that matters. Faction doesn't matter. They are all just Cybertronians trying to survive the Viacons. He does explain what happened, at least what they know. The planet was all watching on every monitor on the planet as Megatron was brought into the High Council for Judgment. What they were made aware of was that Megatron was going to publicly surrender. However, just as he was beginning to speak, they suddenly found themselves trapped in their alternate forms. And they found that CR chambers had no effect on whatever had just happened to them. Those in vehicle mode expended energy so fast they went into stasis lock, and those with beast modes eventually went feral, the same way that the Maximals did in season 1, season 1 of the show. The survivors, with the planet in total chaos, the Viacons very slowly start appearing, and they start rounding up everyone. The survivors aren't sure where any of the other Cybertronians are now. The reason they've used old Icon, the reason they can survive here, is because this old Autobot city is built with far thicker walls for far larger transformers, so the Viacon scanners cannot penetrate this city. That means that the only hope they have of getting any kind of info or saving the planet is going to lie on this new breed of Maximals that can evade the sensors in beast mode. So that's how we are still maintaining the importance of that gimmick. Season 1 features themes that are going to be similar to Beast Wars, but with interesting twists. So they're going to have an episode to loot energy for resources from Megatron's factories to keep old Iacon running, which is when the Maximals realize they haven't had to refuel on Energon since they were reformatted. Curious. One episode is about trying to find Rhinox and Sorbolt's locations with Rat Trap's sneaking skills, leading him to getting captured and outwitting the generals to escape. Another will have Primal and Saberclaw butting heads over leadership of the survivors, and when they finally get along, Primal takes him to Vector Sigma to be reformatted, and it doesn't work. Something about their beast mode lock is interfering. You're also going to have the same antics, not as many chase scene battles between Maximals and Viacons, but you're also going to see a lot of what you saw before. A lot of computer hacking is going to go on, but it's Black Arachnia, which she can do with her webbing instead of Rat Trap using his tail. Rat Trap, by the way, is fully armed in this version, but he has to rely more on trickery than the others. I'm trying to make sure all the notes are straight here, so excuse me. So we have an episode similar to a Stasis Pod episode where a Maximal ship crashes on the planet and it's a race between Viacon and Maximal to get there first. This is how I'm introducing Night Scream. He's damaged so he can't transform, but he hasn't been affected by the Flash. He was not affected by the transformation lock. So he can actually be taken to be reformatted. Now, here, we're going to cut his attitude back. He might still be sarcastic, but he's more portrayed young and optimistic. Now, the pressures of being one of the first of the new breeds of Maximals is going to get to him. The Beast Wars cast has been through a whole war that had the entire universe on the line. They're kind of used to this. For Night Scream, this is a brand new thing for him. He's actually going to find a big brother character in Cheetor who's been in his shoes as the young one who had to suddenly become a warrior. So this is familiar territory, and they're going to have a nice sibling relationship throughout the series. But yeah, the goal is to make Night Scream far more tolerable. We're going to have another Crash episode, by the way, this time where the Maximals are in constant vocal communication with the Cybertronian trapped inside. Unfortunately, the ship is going to be destroyed by the Viacons before they have a chance to get there. I want to do at least one episode like this to kind of hammer in the fact that the Viacons are threatening and that they are not. This is just probably one of the many times that they have done this. So if someone makes it through, like Night Scream did, call that lucky. The Viacon generals are actually going to be more present than they were. I'm going to introduce them a little bit sooner. And Jetstorm is going to appear as early as episode 1. He is already there amongst the cast. Thrust and Tankor, say like episode 3, maybe episode 4. We're not going to drag that out. I want them to have plenty of time to be introduced and give some character to them. The Maximals first assume that they've always been around. Since they saw Jetstorm in episode 1, they just assume all of the Viacons have generals. Makes sense. It is also made clear that even though they don't know who they are, these do possess sparks. So destroying them flat out is off the table because they do not know what sparks are in there. It is, however, made clear to them by Night Viper when they first start talking about the other drones, Thrust and Tankor, that none of them saw any drones besides Jetstorm. None of them saw a general besides Jetstorm. This is the first they have ever heard of other generals, which starts making them wonder. Transformation in the series is still going to be difficult, and rather than just everyone seemingly magically being able to do it, aside from Rat Trap, everyone is going to have a chance to earn it. Cheetor does it in episode 2, like we described. Black Arachnia gets to do it in episode 3. Rat Trap's still going to take a little bit longer than the others at episode 6. And like I said, Black Arachnia is going to get the tech abilities. Rat Trap's going to get the stealth tricks. So they're going to be similar, keeping abilities much closer to how they were in Beast Wars. And Rat Trap's not going to be disarmed. I never really liked that. Night Scream I'm going to give to like episode 5 for his introduction. But he's going to take episode 6 to stay in beast mode before he figures it out in episode 7. I think that's fair. Again, new bodies cannot be picked up by scanners, which means they have to be the ones to save everyone. All right. Now, let's talk about Megatron. So, I don't want Megatron to be in one spot, right? I don't want him to be tethered to the Citadel. I do want to make him big and imposing, but I also don't want to incorporate his organic xenophobia. I never liked that angle about the show. He could still be cold and calculating and prefer the machine, mostly because his previous attempts, his previous goons, kind of showed their failings by how many tried to betray him over the course of the Beast Wars. But what are we going to do form-wise for him? I have an answer. It's called Beast Wars 2 Galvatron, a toy that was in production during the last year of Beast Wars, so they actually had the time to use it. Now, I wouldn't use the mold exactly. I would have done it kind of similar to how they did like modern figures, where they share transformation, but have completely new bodies. So you get something big and imposing to be Megatron. You have a vehicle mode that is a rolling fusion cannon instead of a drill tank. And he prefers that mode, but you make him angry, turns out he still has a dragon mode. So, I think that is a way of blending the two. And like I said, he doesn't have the hatred of organics in this one, just a hatred of what independent agents did during his command. Much prefers the ones he programmed to his will. Once he is debuted, I'm going to keep him hidden for like the first half of season 1. You're only going to hear him during communications with the Viacons and like during some of the infiltration missions. You're not actually going to see him until midway through. And afterwards, he's going to be a presence on the battlefield, much like he was in Beast Wars. He's not going to be one to hide away in the Citadel. Also, it's implied that he doesn't really need to be tethered to the home base anymore, because he has someone else handling things for him. You'll have an episode where while Megatron is out of the Citadel, some of the Maximals try to storm it, only to find out that the automated defenses aren't so automated. They're being far smarter and far more calculating than a mere computer is going to be able to do. They can't outwit them, which means somebody is in control inside. Let's talk about the end of Season 1, shall we? So, the season is going to end with Night Viper accidentally going a little too far in his exploration, getting picked up by the Viacon scanners. This is going to put everyone on high alert, because they've got to stop the Viacons from actually discovering or getting close enough to Old Iacon to discover where it is. So, this is our first major threat to the security of the Cybertronians and the Maximals. This is going to be the first face-to-face between Optimus and Megatron since Beast Wars. I'm going to sit on it for that long, as Maximals attempt to defeat the Viacons, or at least mislead them before they can reach the city. Leading up to this, Tankor is acting strange, intentionally taking wrong directions or missing Maximals when he had a perfect shot. An angry Megatron starts talking him down, and something that he says triggers a memory. And it's a memory of when the Maximals returned to Cybertron, and something very similar was said by Megatron straight to him, back when he was Rhinox. it's enough of a mental break. Now we're going to hint things like this throughout the series, similar to how Season 1 of Beast Machines did, but we're going to be a little bit more subtle about it, and we're not going to be like, oh, hey, these guys are definitely Rhinox and Silverbolt. We're going to keep it a little bit better under wraps than that. But in this case, Rhinox chooses this moment to break free of his programming and does join in the battle with Primal against Megatron. Megatron in this is going to be powerful enough to fend off both of them at the same time, by the way. It ends with Rhinox holding off Megatron and allowing Primal to escape across a like a natural bridge. Well, not a natural bridge, but like just an old bridge in the catacombs. On the other side of said bridge, and then Rhinox once Primal's safely on the other side, Rhinox blasts the bridge, cuts off Megatron. The scene ends with Primal on the opposite side, forced to watch as Megatron blasts a hole straight through Tankor, sending him offline, killing Rhinox, who doesn't go out as a snarling villain, goes out as a hero, saving the last hope that Cybertron has. And then we see the body just tumble into the depths of Cybertron. One tense moment between Megatron and Optimus from across the span of the bridge, and the two leaders part, neither one gaining a victory today. Now, meanwhile, while this is happening, Thrust actually manages to make it all the way into Old Iacon. He discovers them. And then when he tries to contact his drones to come in and attack the place, no one's there. The same thing that keeps the scanners from getting in is keeping his communications from getting out. So he pretty much just sets himself up to be dogpiled by the Maximals here, with Saberclaw in particular taking him down. So it's a two-part episode where the day is saved, with one unfortunate loss. However, the question still asks, why did Night Viper go beyond the reach of Old Iacon? Why did he take the risk? Because he found a tunnel. And not just a normal tunnel on Cybertron, it's a cave. A natural stone cave. The first indication that anything organic is on Cybertron. So, that's Season 1. Season 2. We begin with the morning of Rhinox, and the question, what do we actually do with Thrust? We're going to leave the cave question for here in a minute. They do take a chance, because they realize that while he's not, this is a differently born Cybertronian, he technically is capable of transforming. He technically was not there for the big flash. So what happens if we try to reformat Thrust, especially if we have the idea that he might be someone we know? They do take a chance. They keep him stuck in a thick crate so he can't get his communications out even after they make the trip to Vector Sigma, and they attempt to let Vector Sigma reformat him, but it doesn't seem to work. It does allow him to escape, but he's malfunctioning massively. He can't get a communication out. He can't really even move very well in a straight line or transform. Inside, we get this mind confrontation between Thrust and this blue spark that we can hear speak, but it's very garbled. And it's mostly Thrust trying to appeal to this spark about how fun it was to let go of your moral code and do whatever you wanted. But the spark is going to win out, and the farther we get in this debate, and the clearer the voice gets, and obviously the voice is Silverbolt's. Yeah, he's not Jetstorm in this series. We have indications that the sparks of these drones are something special. However, we're not directly told who they are. Not like we were in Beast Machines. Instead, we're just kind of find out on our own when the time is right. And yeah, this time Thrust is Silverbolt. And Jetstorm, you gotta wait for the rest of this video to figure that one out. Silverbolt's honor does win out. Ultimately, he wants to be the hero. the thrust programming is deleted, the reformatting begins, and yeah, we get to see a techno-organic Silverbolt. He is obviously suffering some kind of trauma from his experience as a Viacon, but he is mostly himself. He's not going to be the dark brooding Batman type for no reason. But now, the path that Thrust took actually did take him deeper and deeper into the new organic tunnel that they found. So now that they're this far, they continue the exploration. And what they find is a cavern that includes a river of bright green organic fluid. And across the bank of the river, these flowers that look like energon crystals are growing. And now we have another mystery. What is Cybertron? Meanwhile, Jetstorm is lamenting at the loss of two of the generals, but Megatron isn't bothered. To him, these sparks more act like batteries, and while he thought using the former maximal sparks would actually gain an advantage, either a reluctance for their friends to destroy them, or for the Viacons to tap some of their old knowledge, ultimately it was a miscalculation. Megatron draws two more sparks, plants them in a random cycle drone and tank drone, and just declares, and you see the general colors starting to take over. Anyone can be Tankor and Thrust. They're just shell programs after all. So Viacons are still at full strength. And if anything, they don't have the weakness of having former Maximal friends piloting them anymore, which leaves Jetstorm still the only one using his original spark. So during this season, we're going to find out exactly what Cybertron really is, as the Maximals uncover some databases that Megatron hadn't found. They're too deep and the info's too old. We know at this point that Cybertron began as a Quintesson factory for manufacturing different robots. That's common knowledge at this point. But what they learn now is that the factories were actually built on top of an organic planet that contained a massive amount of natural energy. Whatever the physiology of this planet was, it literally radiated energon, and just the most pure and powerful energon that that the Quintessons had ever uncovered. Hence why they built their factory here. So hey, we actually have a reason for why Cybertron was built where it was in the first place. But this is also how they find out their techno-organic bodies have been able to stay fueled. As they pass across these flowers, they realize they feel stronger. This is transferring their energy directly to the Maximals. They realize that this might be what Vector Sigma meant. If the planet was reformatted and these types of flowers and this energy was accessible to all of Cybertron, Cybertron would never have to worry about power again. Ever. This could solve the problem that the planet has had literally since episode 1 of the original G1 cartoon. So now they kind of have their goal, and we have something that they need to seek through. All right. Let's get into some really big backstory here. You want to find out exactly what happened the day Megatron showed up back at Cybertron? All right. So, during Season 2, we introduced Strike and Obsidian, and we have introduced them far earlier than we did in Beast Machine, so we have time to actually get to know them. The characterization is similar. They are protectors of the planet Cybertron first and foremost, and they are far more calculated and cunning because they are decorated generals of Cybertron. So, we're going to have an episode where they and the other Viacon generals manage to capture Optimus, and they bring him to Megatron in the Citadel. At the same time, Black Arachnia finally manages to crack the code for the master database, and between the two point of views, we get the full story of what happened when Megatron got back to Cybertron. When Megatron returned, it was ahead of the Maximals, arriving pretty much right after they first left Cybertron. He had already calculated that their transmetal forms were partially powered by the Vox natural energon, so his first act was to try and reconnect to the two in Cybertronian security that opened the door to letting him steal the golden disc in the first place, Strika and Obsidian. The two are former Autobot generals from the end of the Great War, and they were given in command of the now Predacons who would stand in defense of Cybertron as penance for the Decepticons' role in the war. They have battled in 1,000 conflicts to defend their planet and won them all. But somehow the Maximals still treated but they saw how the Maximals were treating those, sacrificing their lives, and basically used as living shields for Cybertron. And they began to resent the Maximal leadership for it. They became sympathizers to the Predacons. Megatron used this to pull off his heist of the disc, and now he's using it to keep in Energon long enough to enact his new plan to take over Cybertron. With their help, they reconfigure the entire broadcast system of Cybertron to be modified with one of Megatron's most successful schemes that he came up with during the Beast Wars, and that's the Transformation Lock Lens. So, with the entire communication system modified, Megatron is brought in by Strika and Obsidian and proclaims that he is surrendering. And as part of his penance, he will make he wants his surrender to be as public as possible. So no Predacons who were to follow his way would ever try again. So the Maximal Council grants him this. They're kind of into this like public subjugation thing here in this situation. More indication that they're not the best of people. But once every single monitor on Cybertron is tuned in to actually see the surrender of the rogue Megatron, the lens effect goes off. Essentially, the three have turned every monitor on Cybertron into a transformation lock lens, and everyone on the planet is hit. It is such a massive blast that even if you didn't have your monitor on, you're still getting affected because of all of the energy going off at the same time, planet-wide. The only place that is truly not affected is Ground Zero, where no one, of course, in the council room needs a monitor to see what's going on. If you had a vehicle mode, you're trapped in vehicle mode. If you had a beast mode, you're trapped in beast mode. CR chambers can't fix it, and the vehicles are draining energy too fast and go into stasis lock. The only ones who escape are the ones who manage to figure out that the programming block that the Maximals on Earth figured out how to delete needs to be deleted to avoid going feral. So that's the only way they survived. Oh, and speaking of surviving, the Maximal Elders do not. Once the chaos is brought on, it's pretty easy work for Megatron, Strika, and Obsidian to wipe them out when they're completely unprepared. This leaves the planet without any kind of leadership and in total and utter chaos, with only these surviving Maximals to escape before the Viacon hordes start taking over everything. So that's how you take over Cybertron. Instead of coming up with some Deus Ex thing that Megatron didn't have the capacity for, you incorporate something that makes sense for the Beast Wars mythos. You incorporate something that he only figured out on Earth, and you take that info back to Cybertron, and then you use it for a grand scheme. And then you pretty much go along with the Viacon plan. Viacons appear. They capture survivors who are in stasis lock or feral, extract sparks, etc. And take over planet. And this is basically him prepping for when Optimus and his Maximals eventually arrive. So the planet is very well defended by the time the last bastion of hope against Megatron finally shows up. Now remember, Optimus is captured while Megatron is going on about this. So he's ready to, once he gets this all off his chest, and basically he's bragging at this point, this is when he prepares a spark extractor for Optimus Primal. He doesn't get the chance. A random Aerodrone flies in, damaging the Viacons holding onto Primal, and then the Nightstream and Silverbolt, who are chasing after the Aerodrone, add to the chaos enough to let Primal escape. Megatron not happy this day. But hey, we managed to get the exposition out there, which is what our real goal here was. We're going to focus on one more crashing ship episode 2 as well. But this time, it's not Botanica. Keep in mind, the Maximals have no reason to play Stardew Valley in this one. They're not growing orchards or techno-organic plants this time. No, they have far more important things to worry about than ferns. So we don't really need Botanica in this one. No, instead, the ship that arrives is actually a crashing stasis pod. And who is inside but a very weak, barely functional Waspenator? Of course, I am not going to leave Waspenator out of this. Now, this is going to give the Maximals just a bit of a dilemma, because, okay, he hasn't been affected by the lens, so he can be reformatted. They can add to their forces. But at the same time, it's Waspenator. I mean, not so much as Waspenator, it's a Predacon. Remember, the Maximals don't know that he went good guy at the end of Beast Wars. All they know is he was one of the only few, like, genuinely loyal Megatron soldiers. So, what do you do? What do you do? So, long story short, Waspenator did figure out eventually the Energon on the planet would not last forever, so he scraped up the last of the Energon and what surviving tech there was to make a crashed pod space-worthy enough. We knew he could do it. We knew Tarantulas could do it, so I'm sure given a couple centuries, Waspenator could probably figure it out as well. So this is how he gets back. Nothing is convoluted as, like, he just flew back for a long time. No, I'm going to explain why. I'm going to actually explain, yeah, he had Energon for the trip, and he used whatever scrap was still functional lying around. This is also how we get rid of some of the leftover Energon and, like, Maximal and Predacon scrap parts that otherwise would probably mess up the flow of time once they're discovered, that kind of thing. So, remember, Waspenator at this point is exceptionally weak. So, they do give him a recharge so they can actually talk to the bug. But when he wakes up in the presence of all these strange-looking Maximals, he bolts. And guess what? Scanners can pick him up. Now, they've gotten better about the scanning. Like, the tunnels now are lined with all the heavy metals of old icons, so they can go a little bit farther. They can actually venture out to, like, Vector Sigma or the caves without tripping a sensor. But Waspenator does manage to fly out to a spot where, yes, the Viacons do pick up on him. Now, this does lead to an encounter between Jetstorm and Waspenator. However, Megatron doesn't want his spark captured and doesn't want him taken down by force. He wants to try a different tact this time. So he uses a comm window through Jetstorm to actually communicate with Waspenator, trying to talk a reason into his former soldier. However, Megatron also does not know Waspenator's final choice. At the end of the day, he doesn't want to be blown up anymore. He doesn't want to be on the constant losing side anymore. More importantly, he kind of enjoyed helping the proto-humans. He kind of enjoyed his position there. So he's grown. He's actually changed a little bit. But more than that, there's something about Jetstorm that is really uncomfortable for Waspenator. And he doesn't know why. He's just not going to trust Jetstorm in the least. So this Megatron's failure to talk his old lieutenant down has given the Maximals enough time to actually reach him. There is a battle for Waspenator, which is something Waspenator never would have expected. Maximals coming to his rescue, especially once he realizes it's the crew from Earth. It's going to be an amusing scene. Like a big dose of levity that was never in Beast Machines before. But it's going to be fun. But more importantly, the Maximals want him to choose. If you want to return to Megatron, we're not going to stop you. But that's not what Waspenator chooses. He means it. He meant it at the end of Season 3. He's sick of being evil. He's sick of being a Predacon. So, he's taken to Vector Sigma, and he's been reformatted. He's going to look similar to the Buzzsaw toy. In my head, he would be a repaint done in like the second series of Beast Wars toys, to look more akin to how he did in Beast Wars. More shades of green, probably a different gimmick for the Stinger rather than the big spring arm. And yeah, new head to give him like a more Waspinator look. We're also going to up the boy's intelligence a little bit. He will not have to talk in long drawn out buzzes or speak in the third person anymore. He'll still give his nicknames to people. He like, it will not be Night Scream. It will be it will be Bat Boy or Bat Bot, things like that. And when the comedic moment's right, he'll still refer to himself as Waspinator. But I do have to bump his intelligence so the writers will actually use him. Remember, that's the reason he didn't get used in Beast Wars. But no, we're going to glow up Waspinator. I think the boy deserves it. So that's going to be our final cast of the Maximals. Basically how it looked in Beast Machines, with the addition of the 3 survivors that stand out amongst that group, with Night Viper, Rav, and Saberclaw. We're just swapping out Botanica for Waspinator, essentially, because I want to give the boy a better ending. Now, we have the following episode, which is going to be very Jetstorm-centric. So, he's been acting strange. He's been acting strange ever since the encounter at the Citadel when Megatron revealed how he took over the planet. So, during the battle, which is all the Viacons against all the Maximals, this is the first time we've seen, like, the big fight between everybody. The battle's coming up in the losing end for the Viacon generals because Jetstorm's not really participating. Like, he seems reluctant to participate. So when the other generals are driven off, due to being outnumbered or outgunned, Jetstorm kind of stays behind. He kind of like tries to slowly slink off, but he gets caught by Cheetor. And then Jetstorm starts begging for help, which catches everyone off guard. Black Arachnia does web him up, just to take no chances, but he's not resisting. So he's recounting the day of the Flash, and he's describing the experience of having his spark ripped out and waking up as Jetstorm, and just speaking about it in horrifying regard. So he seems like he's starting to remember who he was before he was converted. And it happened with Rhinox, so maybe it could be happening again. Maybe that story from Megatron shook something loose. Now, the Maximals are not dumb. They are not trusting this entirely, but Jetstorm does offer to prove himself because he's kind of felt like this for a while, and he's been acting on his own. He has been acting on his own, and he wants to prove himself. It is a risk, and Waspinator is still very uncomfortable around Jetstorm for some reason, but the Maximals do allow Jetstorm to lead them into what seems to be an abandoned Autobot abandoned Autobot laboratory. Again, something with thick walls that cannot be penetrated by sensors. And inside they find out that Jetstorm has actually been working on a machine that can actually detect sparks, like the specific energy that sparks give off. And his claim is that he wants to find where Megatron has stored the sparks of Cybertron. This is actually kind of promising. This is actually kind of like surprisingly promising. So they're starting to believe this. Maybe Jetstorm's on the level. Maybe his previous Maximal self is breaking through. They are interrupted by Thrust, who tracked them to this laboratory without scanners. He did it the old-fashioned way. He just plain out tailed them, who are being not entirely cautious. And he's quickly followed by Strika and Obsidian, who know really what is actually going on. And if this person, and if Jetstorm is not acting like himself, then that means there's someone else piloting the chassis. So they start referring to Jetstorm by his actual name, Starscream. I needed an extra spark, and this is literally the only one that was very literally floating around. So it had to be something familiar. It had to be something useful. So, in this version, the spark of Starscream followed after the Maximals. It stows away on the ship, on Megatron, specifically, in order to get back to Cybertron. Because it's still, because Starscream, being Starscream, is still revenge-based. He still wants payback for the Maximals defeating him on Earth. But similar to Megatron, he does fall off, and Megatron leaves the warp space first. Starscream leaves it second, which means he arrives between Megatron's takeover and the arrival of the Maximals. Now, keep in mind, we're actually treating sparks the way they're supposed to be treated. You know, I will allow Megatron to start ripping them out, but there's no giant sea monkey tank full of sparks that can somehow survive outside of bodies. So when Megatron finds this floating spark on Cybertron, he knows there's only one person it can be. There is only one spark that is strong enough, you know, with the exception of the linked sparks that Tigatron and Airazor eventually fused in their eventual fusion. But with that exception, and we're gonna blame Vok nonsense for that, by the way, Megatron knows that the only spark that's able to survive outside of its body is Starscream's. So he captures it, locks it inside one of his Viacons to imprison it, and is hoping that will, and with the intention of giving Jetstorm the tactical abilities as well as the historical knowledge of Starscream. You know, he wants those skills implanted in his Viacon General in spite of the risks. However, Starscream's spark is way too powerful to be overwritten by a shell program. So he breaks through. So he is never actually Jetstorm. He knows the program. He knows what the character, who he is supposed to be reprogrammed into, but he is actually keeping it at bay. He is playing the long game. For once in his life, Starscream has been playing the long game the entirety of this series. So, with him revealed, he activates the surprise in the room, which is a horde of white Aerodrones with red trimming. This is Starscream. He is egotistical enough to not only have his own crew of Aerodrones that have been separated from Megatron's collective, but also recolor them like himself. You know he'd do it! You know he'd do it. He uses their attack in order to escape the Viacons and the Maximals, and Viacons and Maximals both have to team up to take out this threat. And by the end of it, it's 3 generals who, in the lab, cannot contact their drones versus 7 Maximals. So, Strike and Obsidian, being the wiser tacticians, decide that they are outnumbered and they've got more important matters that Megatron needs to be informed of, and they leave, which now sets us up with a third antagonist, or a secondary antagonist for this show, just as we're about to enter the end game portion of the series. So as we enter the end game, we actually find out exactly what Megatron was up to. The Maximals discovered that throughout the series, I should point this out, there's a background detail that happens throughout the series, and it's in any distance shot of Cybertron where you can see like the silhouette of the horizon. You can see things being built. You can see buildings having construction, either adding to them or building up on them. And they're huge tower structures with what look like giant openings at the top. And throughout the series, you see them slowly rise. You see the construction get taller and taller. And you can see like support girders sticking out the top, cranes, normal signs of construction that you would be able to spot in silhouette. So it's kind of informing the audience. It's something's going on in the background if you're paying attention this entire series. Now we finally find out that this is actually a major detail because these structures are actually thrusters and cannons. Megatron is attempting to convert Cybertron into a war world, capable of traversing the galaxy and decimating any planet they run across. So I kind of wanted Megatron to have a pretty big threat, and if Megatron can't take over all the time, oh, you sure he's going to take over the galaxy. You know, it's one thing about fighting in the Beast Wars and realizing everything else out there. He's really, he's expanded his horizons a little bit. Cybertron's not enough. Also, now that the Maximals are so much stronger than they were, and now that he's down one of his generals again, Megatron opts for a new strategy. So the Maximals encounter another horde of Viacons. And this time, the heads of the Viacons have been altered. They don't look like the generals' heads anymore. Instead, their heads are domes. Like completely clear domes, like cockpits. And inside is a spark chamber. It is not in control of the Viacon. It is literally just a life support chamber installed as the head of these Viacons. Megatron is now using the sparks of Cybertron as living shields for his drone army. Now, it's effective because the Maximals have nothing to fight this. Yeah, it works. It works. The Viacons are far more effective and far harder to kill when the Maximals can't simply blow them up without killing a random Cybertronian. And this is enough. This is enough for the Maximals to actually lose a battle, lose an encounter with the Viacons. This is one of the times where they just run and escape like they did in the proper show, because they've got no other choice here. Meanwhile, it's a move that Strika and Obsidian are very clearly not comfortable with, because they know the math, they do the numbers. There's way more Viacons than there were Maximals. And Megatron can assure that these are only powered by the Maximal Sparks and the Predacons are safe, but the numbers don't add up. Meanwhile, Starscream and his personal Aerodrones are using the Spark Seekers. They are exactly what Starscream said they were. They are scanners that detect sparks specifically, but they aren't there to track the sparks that are locked inside of wherever Megatron has them. He's using them to try and find old Iacon, which he does. See, remember, Starscream is a scientist before he was a soldier, so he not only had the intelligence to put this together, he also puts two and two together to realize that the Maximals have not been going after stores of Energon on Cybertron in a long time. Clearly, they're getting it from somewhere else. Something is still powering them. So he wants to know what. And that's exactly what happens. Throughout, he manages to find old Iacon. He doesn't really care about the survivors. He wants the power source. And he does. He actually does find the cave, which now, they've kind of started tapping that for energy themselves. There's a makeshift generator that's wired directly through the cave system. And that's what's powering the city now. So now that he's aware, he leaves in order to plot his own access to the energy. He wants to bring in all of his reprogrammed Aerodrones in order to fight this one and take over the city. But as soon as he gets to the surface, he's face to face with Megatron, and his white drones are no longer under his control. Turns out they never were. Megatron, as always, is calculating. He is the one thing about Beast Machine's Megatron that was sorely lacking is the fact that Beast Wars Megatron was always 4 steps ahead of everybody else when it came to the planning department. Megatron pretty much knew that being stuck as Jetstorm was not going to last, if it ever was at all. But he wanted Starscream to roam free because it would allow him and his original scientific knowledge to start churning and figure out things that Megatron could not, especially with Starscream's knowledge of the past, you know? So, this bears fruit now that he has the spark scanners. And as soon as Starscream leaves, Jetstorm's memory banks plug back into Megatron again. He now knows exactly where old Iacon is, and now he's aware of the energy of the war, energy of the core. He was originally content to just tap the sparks of Cybertron in order to power his war world. But now, he's got something a lot better now. So plans have officially changed. Meanwhile, that battle with the drones that didn't go well, it's still going on, but this time it is the assault drones and the copter drones that have taken over the chase of the Maximals. Again, they've got nothing they can do. They can't fight back with living shields blocking them. And this is when Obsidian and Strika join up and take the head of the assault. But once they are there, they turn to their drones and immediately disable them. The Arsenal drones drop their weaponry. The copter drones fall out of the sky. No one's moving. They have shut their entire army down. Now, the sparks are still intact and they are still saved. They've just done so without damage. So, remember the motivation behind this iteration of Strika and Obsidian. Megatron's original agreement was to release the Predacon sparks back into their bodies once the threat of Primal's Maximals was dealt with, but now that they've seen what Megatron has resorted to, and finding out more themselves about the War World plan, they realized this was never what Megatron intended to do. He was going to keep the entire planet subjugated, and that's not what they signed up for. So they end up switching sides, because this is worse than any Maximal had ever done to a Predacon. So, they warn of all of Megatron's plans. They tell the Maximals about the War World, the buildings, and even down to the recent communications that Megatron has had, which tells them of Starscream and the location of the survivors. So, with the Maximals queued in, this is where we get to our final battle. And this is going to be split across multiple fronts. Optimus is going to confront Megatron in the Citadel for a final one-on-one fight. It's going to be a pretty epic fight. Like, they're going to clash all throughout the surface of Cybertron. Primal's going to be doing a lot of, flying to avoid Megatron, whose Dragon Mode wings don't exactly allow flight in this version, but his firepower in both of his alt modes, as well as, like, in his robot mode, because he's heavily armed there, too. It keeps Primal on his toes no matter how he flies. So they're going to go all across through old settings that we had seen previously in the series. Before the encounter, Optimus entrusts Cheetor to lead the Maximals in his absence, and he puts him in charge of protecting old Iacon from the massive assault that's about to come forward. And it is not only drones of all 5 types, it's the surviving generals of Thrust and Tankor, and it's the driller cables, the ones that we saw in the series, that are now trying to bore down into the depths of Cybertron and access the organic core's energy. So this is going to lead into a pretty massive assault all over old Iacon. It is not only the bulk of the Maximals who are going to be fighting off the major threats, but it's also going to be the survivors where applicable. In particular, you're going to have spots where Night Viper comes to the rescue of Night Scream against a horde of drones. You're going to have Rav and Saberclaw taking direct action in the fight. And then, we're going to use those background, middling characters. You're going to see this across a lot of different different depths of flight. You're going to see, the flocks of recolored air razors taking on Aerodrones. You're going to see, like, Cyclodrones getting stopped by, like, the silver primal repaint in the background. Things like that. We're going to make this seem like a massive battle going all across Old Iacon. Huge and epic in scale. We're going to see specific spots. Rat Trap takes on himself to battle Tankor in what should be a very one-sided affair, but he's battling in the name of his fallen friend Rhinox, and actually manages to outwit Tankor. Finding a way of disabling him, bit by bit, but just basically riding across his big body and basically just like undoing wire after wire until there's nothing left that Tankor can move. Starscream's going to make one last play for the power source, and he's going to be chased down by Strika, Obsidian, and Waspenator. The being old Autobot generals, Strike and Obsidian have a personal beef with Starscream. So they consider this their fight, but Starscream has the training gloves off. Since he no longer has to hide his abilities, he is light years ahead of these two. Like, there's just no way for them to contemplate. He beats both of them, which just leaves Starscream versus Waspenator, the two that shared a body back in Beast Wars. And Waspenator does, for give him credit, he manages to drag Starscream back out of the cave and back into Old Iacon, and goes through a pretty intense aerial battle. Because here's the thing. Waspenator might not have had the intelligence before to utilize it, but he still remembers Starscream's tactics and abilities from when they shared a body. And now that he has a body that's capable of the same abilities, these two are actually on equal footing. Waspinator is a comparable battle to Starscream. Like I said, I'm giving the boy his due. Yeah, and I want to like fill this. Like, I want Black Arachnia and Silverbolt to be battling Thrust. Because I want him to be battling his old self, even though it's someone new inside the body. So things like that. When the big driller cables start penetrating the core, they're going to start siphoning energy up. And this is the bad sign, right? Of course, this is a bad sign because Megatron's about to get a huge amount of power. But it's radiating this power. It's way more than the cables expected. So it's just like pulsing out from it. And Waspinator uses that to drive Starscream into the cable, which essentially electrocutes both with this massive organic energy. And Starscream is screaming at him that this will kill them both. Like, no immortal spark can handle this. Waspinator is willing to bet his spark is more immortal than Starscream's. So he overcomes his fear of this thing that took him over and keeps him there until there is a massive explosion of energy. An explosion that not only severs the cable, I think it's like when I say cable, it's like, I don't know, like 50 feet wide. It's like, it's a tunnel driller. So imagine that, and imagine the energy that pulses out and fills all of Old Iacon when it surges. We get a shot where it's just this bright green and white energy, and we're seeing Saberclaw from the rear. And when we see it, it's so bright that we only see him in silhouette, but we see him transform. It's going to leave that there. We're just going to leave that there. So, with that going on, let's go back to Primal and Megatron. Their battle, as I said, is going to rage all across the planet. It's going to break into Old Iacon at some point and join the larger battle at hand. And all the main Maximals are going to get a lick in on Megatron before Primal manages to drive him out again. But the battle is going to eventually spill into the Chamber of Vector Sigma. Taking the same route they took in episode 1, tumbling through the old catacombs, battling through them in order to reach the area. The difference is, this time, Primal is on the ropes. This is basically him just kind of retreating through, at this point in the battle, Megatron's got the edge, and Primal's basically just retreading ground that he's familiar with. So he doesn't even realize that he's taken Megatron directly to Vector Sigma, which is a delightful boon for Megatron. He, not only does he have the power of the sparks, not only is he siphoning the core of Cybertron, he's also now gained control of the master computer that is the source of life for Cybertronians. This is a bad situation. This is a real bad situation. A tunnel driller comes in and carves out the top of Vector Sigma's chamber. And you can see cables start descending from it and start hooking onto this machine. And this includes spark extractor cables. They are directly hooking themselves into Vector Sigma by Megatron's command. Megatron gives his machine an order. Lock onto Primal and extract his spark. Now, the very weakened Primal lays there on the ground, just watch, with Megatron's back turned to him as he gloats and starts tapping into Vector Sigma directly. Primal has one thing to say. You forget, Megatron. I am transformed. He converts back to beast mode. And the cable, the spark extractor that was lurching close to him, stops. And it's like looking left and right, like it's trying to find something it just had. It doesn't have optics. It only has sensors. And Megatron's sensors can't find techno-organic beast modes. Part of the thing I love is taking the thing that we learned very early in the series, bringing it back in the climax. So it all comes full circle. The original advantage is what gives Optimus Primal the edge here. He pulls himself up, grabs onto this spark extractor while it's still active, jams it into Megatron's back. There's nothing he can do. His own device pulls his spark clean out. His Viacon body crumples to the floor. Now Optimus is not one to just let a spark become extinguished, even if it is in enemies. Nor is he going to let it be trapped like the rest of Cybertrons. Instead, he presents the spark, still trapped by the extractor, to Vector Sigma, the gateway between the living world and the Matrix. And Sigma takes the spark back. Megatron rejoins the Matrix in a way no one has before, but it's a suitable punishment, and it brings about the end of the battle. Elsewhere, we've got a victory being felt by the rest of Cybertron. There's cheers and old Iacon now that everyone is back in robot mode. Now, obviously, for budgetary reasons, we can't show it, but we hear them. Maybe silhouettes of like generic ones here and there. Black Arachnia and Silverbolt finally get to have a moment after the defeat of Thrust. And the other Maximals survey the disabled drones. All the sparks are still intact and okay, so they've saved Cybertron as well. Cheetor is the one who comes across the fallen body of Waspenator. It's burned, it is covered in dirt and soot. It's in really rough shape, and it's not moving. So, Cheetor does take a moment. They hadn't been allies for very long, but, he did start to grow to like Waspenator. He will admit he's going to miss the bug. And that's when Waspenator gets up. He's a rough shape, but you can't kill him. You just can't kill him. It's one last moment of levity where the two characters who first started the Beast Wars can now admit that they are friends at the end of the Beast Wars. It's that little sign of it's all over. And again, like I said, I want to give my boy a better ending. So let's pass some time, shall we? The driller cables are still being used, but this time intentionally to dig to the core, and Strika and Obsidian are overseeing it. Once the cables reach the core, they command their drones to destroy the cable, because all it really needs is to allow access from the core to the surface of Cybertron. And once the cable is severed and retracts, a large pocket of greenery is created. Not only like a pool of this organic fluid, but it starts spreading greenery all the way across. And it's, it pops up all of these like little energon crystal flowers. The same ones that they know can repower Maximals, at least biological Maximals. And as we look around the scenery, it's dotted all over. It looks like the way parks are built in cities. You still have these sprawling mechanical cities and towers, but you have these pockets of pure greenery and nature. So you don't see like the overwhelming mix that, where everything is just grass covered at the end of Beast Machines. You get a balance, which is what they were supposed to be aiming for in the first place. Now, the former Viacons are going to retain the robotic forms. For them, that is penance for what they had done. However, they now have sole control of all Viacon drones. And now that they have a command that they do not have to worry about sacrificing, they can return to their true purpose, which is defending Cybertron and all Cybertronians on it, Maximal or Predacon, and no one has to be put into servitude for it. I think it's a very good way of utilizing the Viacons after the war, and I think it's an appropriate role for Strika and Obsidian, who need to atone for their allegiance and kind of re-find who they used to be. Elsewhere, Black Arachnia and Rat Trap are admiring a new facility they just finished, and they are awaiting the results. A door opens, and inside you can see that there is a new chamber housing Vector Sigma. And you can see that it is directly linked into the core because there's cables connected to it that are lit up with green energy. And stepping out from that door is a completely robotic and techno-organic Night Viper. The first one to volunteer for the brand new reformatting for Cybertron. And a very happy Night Scream is waiting to greet him when he emerges. So I really want Night Viper to be like a really cool little side character for this one, really likable. And you're going to cry, like, why just make him a techno-organic at the very end? Because I think his story comes in being able to help despite what Megatron did to him. And also, I don't know, I think it's a little bit more poetic this way. You're going to ask, but wait, that gives you 8 Maximals. You said you weren't going to go beyond the budget of the series. I didn't. Did you see Noble in this show? We've got room to make one model, and I'm giving it to Night Viper. Though we do hear word of the others, Rav and Saberclaw wanting their shots next, etc. But they're just thrilled for now that it actually works. And, the more of these facilities they make, the faster they can convert Cybertron into the new techno-organic bodies. Meanwhile, Silverbolt and Waspenator are piloting cargo freighters to former Viacon factories, where they've now safely stored the sparks recovered from the Viacon heads. They're still in the heads, by the way, because they are acting as life support. Now, the freighters contain 2 things. They contain new stasis pods, with blank protoforms in order to restore sparks that had otherwise lost their bodies in the conflict. And they also contain some of the bodies that they had recovered from Megatron. And because they've been able to reverse engineer Megatron's extraction, they are able to make the machine find the sparks specifically for whichever bodies that they recover. So they can also restore a lot of the Cybertronians. Silverbolt does mention that the more bodies they restore, the faster they're going to be able to do this. So it's going to seem like it's slow, but it'll grow. And meanwhile, Waspenator has actually been very good at fixing up a lot of the bodies that they have been finding. As it turns out, when you spend so much time putting yourself back together, you make a pretty good medic. And we've actually kind of see that Waspenator might have a brand new role in restoring Cybertron. It's rewarding, and it's a nice way for Waspenator to go out, I think. Meanwhile, we leave with Optimus standing in the center of the Citadel. It's brightly lit up. The council chairs have been restored. It looks far more regal than the cold blue that Megatron left it. Cheetor was summoned, and as he arrives, Primal states that with the Maximal Elders destroyed, Cybertron will need a new council to lead them into the Techno-Organic Age. He and Saberclaw have already discussed this, and they realize that you can't have a council with two. At the very least, you need a third to break any tie between them. And Primal wants Cheetor for the job. He's gone through a lot. He's proven himself a capable leader. And Cheetor's reluctant. I mean, just like the original series, they've butted heads. But in these final moments of the series, Primal admits he's counting on that. He's going to need to be opposed so they keep a balance. Because that's what the series was always about. The balance. It's a final moment for Cheetor's growth. To become a leader, go from that brash kid trying to prove himself to one of the leaders who is going to teach a new generation of Cybertronians how to live on the new Cybertron. And that's the note we end on. Looking over a Cybertron that's just as green as it is steel blue. And an optimistic future for what Cybertron's going to be. And they might actually finally be at peace for once. And that, my friends, is how I would redo Beast Machines. It's a very long story. I mean, I basically explained something in the length of time you could have watched a movie. If you made it this long, I do appreciate it. And I hope you enjoyed it. I put a lot of thought into this one. I'm trying not to leave plot holes. I'm trying to give everyone something to do and try and make a satisfying conclusion for everyone's favorites. More importantly, just want it to feel better than the ending of Beast Machines. And I think I nailed this. But that's the writer's opinion, of course. So let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you made it all the way through, again, thank you very much for hearing a very long-winded video. I am going to get some cold water for my throat. I'm going to spend the rest of the evening not talking. And I will start getting to work on the news roundup for tomorrow. So thank you once again for watching something this long. I will see you next time.
We're gonna have to get your names for the books. You, Pale One.
William Current.
Roll me a deception check.
I thought their name was Pain.
Roll a disadvantage.
Okay.
That was like the opposite of the help action there. You, Goblin.
First name D's.
Watch your tongue.